For I am Saruman the Wise, Saruman Ringmaker, Saruman of many colors. I looked then and saw that his robes, which had seemed white, were not so, but were woven of all colors, and if he moved they shimmered and changed hue so that the eye was bewildered. Thus Kurmo was changed, and he fell from grace, failing the mission set forth before him by the Valar. Hey everyone, Yoiston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we will be speaking of Saruman and his life, where he began as a Maya, and how he ended up as a fallen wizard. There will be related articles and videos in the description and cards that aided with the creation of today's video. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me as we journey back into Middle-earth to look at this character. Let's begin our tale. We start back with the Ainu Lindale, and the coming years of Ea, the known universe, and Arda, the world in which Kurmo, of the race of the Ainur, who became a Maya of Aule the Smith, dwelt. Kurmo, like the other Maiar, would serve at the behest of his lord, until such a time as he was commanded to achieve a different purpose. Sometime before 1000 of the Third Age, a council was held by the Valar, during which they decided to send 5 emissaries to Middle-earth. These emissaries, Istari, were to take on the appearances of old men, and these 5 were meant to advise the Free Peoples in their conflicts with the Shadow of Sauron, who was interestingly enough a former cohort of Saruman, having also once served Aule the Smith. Now Aule would choose Kurmo to go, and Yavanna, the wife of Aule, would beg Kurmo to take Iwendil, who would later become known as Radagast, with him. Kurmo reluctantly agreed, but would never truly respect Radagast in Middle-earth. And besides the 2 blue wizards, another was chosen, and this was Olorin, who had served Nienna, Manwë, and Varda. Olorin would be remarked by Varda as not being the third to go, but rather it seems possible to me that she meant he was to be the second behind Kurmo, or perhaps even greater than Kurmo. And Kurmo indeed remembered this, and would begin his long-standing jealousy of Olorin, or Gandalf. And so it was that Saruman and the other Istari came to Lindon in Middle-earth around the year 1000 of the Third Age, if others didn't come earlier. Chief among these, the 5 wizards of Middle-earth, was Kurmo, later called Kurunir by elves or Saruman by men, all meaning skilled man or cunning one in their respective languages. He was tall and had raven-black hair that mostly turned white by the end of the Third Age. His face was long, his eyes deep, and he was gaunt and grave. His robes were white in color. His greatest powers were in his knowledge, for throughout the Third Age he gathered much lore, especially on Sauron and Ringcraft, and his voice, which was perilous for the weak-willed, or even those with greater constitutions, for he could command others, even enemies, into believing his lies. And so, while Gandalf mostly sought aid from elves and later hobbits, and would be a wanderer who would also help dwarves and men and all free peoples, Círdan would give Gandalf Narya, the Ring of Fire, and one of the 3 Elven Rings, and Saruman would later learn about this, and it would grow his jealousy. Radagast, on the other hand, found comfort in nature. Saruman would believe power lied in the kingdoms of men, and power was his greatest interest. Thus, early on in Saruman's time in Middle-earth, he journeyed east with the 2 blue wizards into unknown lands, where were some of the realms of men. He would be gone for over a millennium, and he alone, without the 2 blue wizards, would return to the west just as Sauron's power grew once more in Dol Guldur, and the watchful peace was brought to an end around 2460 of the Third Age. This is odd timing indeed, and further it is curious that the wizard that would eventually prove a traitor returned without the 2 blue wizards. And so it was that, as the shadow lengthened, a group was formed to plot against it. This was the White Council, and although Galadriel wanted Gandalf to be the head of the White Council, Gandalf rejected it, and Saruman took the spot for himself. Now Saruman, unlike Gandalf, wanted a stronghold, a place of strength to command the power of the West from. So, after studying the records of Gondor for a time, he offered to steward the ancient Gondorian fortress of Isengard, and the Gondorian steward at the time, Beren, as well as King Frealof of Rohan, both welcomed this, and so Saruman was given the key of Orthanc in 2759. And so it was that Saruman gained possession also of the Palantir within the Tower of Orthanc, the Orthanc Stone, and his fall to evil began, for Sauron's servants held the Ethiel Stone at that time as well. And so as the years went by, Saruman the Wise abandoned reason for madness, beginning to learn more of ringcraft, of which Sauron was the lord, for Saruman wanted to forge his own ring, one to rival the One Ring. At this point, Saruman also truly just wanted to find the One Ring for himself. And so, during the White Council meeting in 2851, Saruman dissuaded the council from attacking Sauron in Dol Guldur, against Gandalf's wishes. And though Saruman would mock the hobbits and Gandalf's interest in them and their pipeweed, Gandalf would blow out smoke rings and grab at them, potentially indicating his guess of Saruman's purpose to find the One Ring. And this would bother Saruman for quite some time, even though Gandalf was not truly suspicious until after Saruman's treachery. Saruman also wondered if the halflings had any connection to the Ring of Power through Gandalf's demonstration, and though they did not at the time, the hobbits eventually would. Saruman's jealousy of Gandalf grew, and he even began to smoke pipeweed in mockery of Gandalf in private, and would attempt to stealthily visit the Shire from time to time, although Gandalf became aware of this. Indeed, however, Saruman would use his time searching for the ring, where it was lost in the Anduin to no avail, all while the malice of Sauron grew uncontested in Dol Guldur. While Saruman eventually found the bones and items of Isildur, later discovered by Aragorn and Gimli and Orthanc, he did not find the One Ring. Eventually, in 2941, Saruman finally consented to oust Sauron from Dol Guldur, fearing what the Dark Lord had discovered concerning the location of the ring, and so Saruman took part in the assault on Dol Guldur. Sauron was ousted back to Mordor, where he would take up the Ethial Palantir and communicate with Saruman directly. In 2953, the White Council gathered once more and for the last time, and Saruman lied, saying the One Ring drifted out to sea and was lost forever. After this, Saruman made ready for his ultimate betrayal, placing spies in the north near the Shire, fortifying Isengard as his own fortress rather than as one of Gondor. He started to make trouble for Rohan by aiding Sauron. Saruman believed Sauron would be the victor over the West, and joined with him, although he would be a double traitor, and was never completely loyal to the Dark Lord, and Sauron would discover this. But in the meantime, Saruman would be a useful puppet, for he corrupted the man Grima Wormtongue of Rohan to help enthrall Theoden King for Saruman's designs, as more and more orcs pillaged Rohan. Eventually, the time came to reveal his plans, and Saruman spoke first with Radagast, telling him the Nazgul were abroad, and persuading him to send Gandalf to Isengard. Radagast performed this deed perfectly, and Gandalf arrived at Isengard on July 10th of 3018. At this point, Isengard was still full of trees and natural life. When Gandalf spoke to Saruman, he would see a ring upon the former White Wizard's finger. But Saruman thus spoke his scorn for Radagast openly to Gandalf, and though he clearly was jealous of Mithrandir, he was no fool and saw his power, wanting Gandalf to join him and speak to him of the ring, for he knew at that point a hobbit had it, and Gandalf was a good friend of the halflings. He thus became Saruman of many colors, rather than simply Saruman the White, for he sought a station high above his own, and just as white light refracted through a prism becomes many colors, he thought his transformation brought him closer to power. But no, he abandoned his allies and failed his purpose in life, and Gandalf rebuked him, leading to his imprisonment atop Orthanc, and his eventual rescue by Gwaihir the Windlord. Many plans of Saruman were thus set into motion, as Isengard went from a place of nature and beauty to one of industry and evil, and orcs came there, and Saruman would create many Uruk-hai, likely improving upon Sauron's original creation of Uruk-hai, which had happened some time before. The Wizard of Many Colors would recruit the Dunlendings to wage war on the Rohirrim, their ancient enemies. His brigands and ruffians would soon begin to take over Bree and the Shire in the name of Sharki, or Sharku, which means old man in Orcish. The Nazgul would come to Isengard, and Saruman lied to them at the gate about his interrogation of the Grey Wizard, and his voice even fooled the Witch King, and Saruman said he would report back to Sauron, but the Nazgul would soon stop one of Saruman's spies, and would find out the truth. Saruman sent forth wolves and orcs after they left to show his power to the Nazgul and Rohan. For a time, Saruman remained a true threat and power in the world, for the Fellowship of the Ring journeyed not towards Isengard at the end of 3018 and the beginning of 3019, but rather they traversed Moria just to avoid Isengard. It mattered little, though, for Saruman sent a band of orcs and Uruk-hai to waylay the Fellowship of the Ring, in an attempt to take the halflings and slay the others. This band killed the man Boromir, son of the Steward of Gondor, whose ancestor Saruman once pledged friendship to, and the hobbits Merry and Pippin were captured, while around that same time a different force of Saruman's defeated the Rohirrim at the fords of Isen, and slew Prince Theodred of Rohan. But this is when things began to go unwell for Saruman, as the higher powers that had once blessed him sent Gandalf back to the world after his fall to the Balrog of Moria, and Gandalf the Grey became Gandalf the White and took the place of Saruman. Saruman was right in thinking that the kingdoms of men were powerful, for the riders of Rohan completely destroyed his band of orcs and uruks. The two halflings were lost to the forest of Fangorn, and it even seems that Saruman put forth a phantom, which met the three hunters on the edge of the Fangorn forest. Gandalf met these hunters and went on to save the king of Rohan from Saruman's grasp, sending Wormtongue back to his master. All while the hobbits Merry and Pippin aided the Ents in going to war against Isengard, for Saruman's servants had felled too many trees, the friends of the Ents. Thus, before he could waste any more time, he sent forth a mighty host from Isengard, scattering the Rohirrim at the fords of Isen and pushing the armies of Rohan back to Helm's Deep, where a great battle took place and a deadly device of Saruman's was unleashed, an explosive device that blasted the walls of the Hornburg. However, Saruman was ever hindered by Gandalf the White, and while the Ents set upon Isengard, drowning it and destroying much of the ring, Gandalf rallied the scattered forces of Rohan as well as some of Treebeard's Huorns, and defeated Saruman's army at Helm's Deep. In one night, Isengard went from a deadly power in Middle-earth to a broken and defeated faction. Sometime later, Gandalf and his friends came there to Orthanc, and though Saruman's power of speech aided him there, he was now lesser in strength than Gandalf the White, who casted him out of the Order of the Astari and broke his staff. Grima threw Saruman's palantir from the tower, and Treebeard would guard the tower, not allowing Saruman to escape for some time. The Orthanc Stone would soon be used by Pippin, and Sauron would believe he was a captured hobbit, a subject of Saruman, and thus Sauron sent a Nazgul upon a fell beast to have, probably, quite ill words with the former White Wizard, as Saruman had no allies left, but only weak thralls and bullies to serve him. Eventually, Saruman used his powerful voice, after enduring the many stories of Treebeard, to awaken pity in the Ent's heart. And Treebeard would allow him and Grima to leave Isengard, only after locking the tower and surrendering the key to him. After the war was won and Sauron was destroyed, Gandalf and other elven members of the White Council, including Galadriel, Celeborn, and Elrond, came upon Saruman and Grima in the wild, traveling north. They were no threat now, or so it seemed to the wise, and were let go, as they seemed to be beggars on the road, and despite how poorly Saruman treated Grima, Wormtongue would not leave him. And so they went to the last refuge of their power, the Shire, and specifically Bag End in Hobbiton, where Saruman took up refuge, likely just to spite Gandalf and the Hobbit heroes, for truly, other than the supplies and food from the Shire, it had little strategic value for Saruman, especially now that there was a king in the north once more, and its residents did not fight back, until the four hobbits returned, however, and rallied the Shire against Saruman's Scouring. At the last, Frodo and his allies confronted Saruman and Grima, and though Saruman attempted to assassinate Frodo with a dagger, he was hindered by the hobbit's mithril coat, and was spared by Frodo the Nine-Fingered. Saruman, with respect, fear, and hatred, spoke of how the hobbit had grown, and that he would accept Frodo's mercy and depart. But after abusing Grima once more, the thrall of Saruman turned on his master and slew him by slicing his throat, only to be shot himself by hobbit archers. And so it was that the spirit of Curumo rose as a grey mist above his body, and it looked west, only to be rejected and pushed back by the cold wind of Manwë, the breath of the world. With a sigh it dissolved into nothing, and Saruman's body and skin became horrid to look upon, as a great decay befell the body. Frodo covered Saruman's face and looked away, and with that, the once mighty Maya Curumo and wise wizard Saruman, who fell to his lust of power and dominion, was ended on November 3rd of 3019. And so we come to the end of our tale on Saruman. From his history we can see that Saruman, though he had once been great and wise, fell to his vices. We must understand and overcome our flaws, lest they overcome us. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this epic character history. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts, questions, additions, and corrections on Saruman? Let me know in the comments below. The Wizard of Many Colors offers such a contrast to Gandalf, and though he is similar to Sauron in many ways, it is fascinating that he betrayed even Sauron. His story is truly a fall from grace. Thanks to our Valar tier patrons, Adrian De la Torre, Chris Ortner, Kyle Wetzel, Peter Sheppard, Jonathan Putnam, Mark Kralik, Blair Scouten, Tobias Goldner, Merton, John Hume, Reggie93, Jennifer Wood, Sam McBee, Matt Sabach, Quantum Catalyst, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, Ben Gardner, and Condar. Thank you all so much, and thank you to all of our patrons. It really means a lot. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. And I'll see you all again next week with our third episode of What's Different between the Return of the King book and movie. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.